Thank you. We'd like to start by asking the guests in the room to introduce themselves.
Hi, yeah, I'm definitely a guest. It's nice to be here. My name's Christine Banda and I'm with Captura.
Welcome, Christine. How about in the in the conference room? Do we have any guests?
Yes, we do.
Yep. Good morning. I'm Gerald Hessinga, owner of Indo-Pacific Sea Farms and chairman of the KO Point Lava Group, KPLG.
Hi, Jerry.
Hi.
Any other guests in the conference room? Sorry, I can't see everything.
Yes, Jim Wyban.
Hi, I'm Jim Wyban. I'm on Zoom and I wrote the investigation report about the water quality system.
Aloha, Jim. Thank you for joining us. Anyone else
Thank you.
online that is a guest?
Bloom here with HHF Planners working on the master plan update.
Thank you.
And just me here.
Thank you.
And we have one more person, Chan KB. He said in the chat that his camera did not work, but not sure if the audio works.
Okay, welcome, Kaliko. We see here from the chat that you're with the Department of Hawaiian Homelands. Thank you for calling in. All right, do we have any other guests, Laurence, that I'm missing?
I think that covers everybody I can see on my end. We have, of course, staff on this end when you're ready.
Okay, we can have the staff introduce themselves and then we'll take it over to roll call, please.
Okay, Laurence Sambardier, I'm Deputy Director filling in. I've been TA'd in the Executive Director position.
Faustine Edge, Administrative Assistant with NELHA.
Keith Olson, NELHA's Chief Science and Operations Officer. Alex Leonard, NELHA Chief Projects Officer.
And that is everybody on our end.
Okay, online we have Ray and Pam.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning. This is Pam, Water Quality Manager for NELHA, and I'm in the lab with just myself.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. This is Ray. I'm the marketing specialist here. I'm by myself. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, turning over to you for roll call, Laurence.
Okay, Chair Kalipi.
Present, and no one else is in the room with me.
Chair Vice Chair Miyashiro.
Present. No one else is in the room with me.
Director Bruce
Here.
in the conference room.
Conference room, sorry.
Director Jones.
Here, conference room.
Director Sirmas.
Here, nobody in the room with me.
Director Adams.
Yep, here I'm in the airport lounge on earphones.
Director Sal.
Present conference room.
Director Hilton.
Yes, here by myself in my office.
Director Bossert.
Here and by myself.
Director Kim.
I'm here. My wife is in our house.
Director Wicker.
Present, alone.
And I believe we also have John Cole on the Zoom side of things.
Alone in my office too. Thanks.
Looks like someone's in the waiting.
And we have one more person that is just getting admitted right now. Dayer Shim, could you please introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Daya Shim, a planner at HHF Planners.
Thank you. That's it, Chair.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Welcome. The first item on our agenda is the approval of the new minutes methodology and approval of the July 16th, 2024 NELHA Board of Directors meeting minutes. Laurence, could you please present on our new methodology and item?
Sure. I'm sharing my screen. Please let me know if you're not seeing it. So this is to present a new methodology. In the past, we used to do extended summary to serve as minutes after each board meeting. What we are suggesting and proposing to do is to replace that with a succinct summary, which includes the basics, date, time, place of meeting, attendees, board directors' presence, absence, whether they're late, early, and a record of motions and votes. And all of that is time-stamped to a full recording of the meeting, which is then also posted on the website. So on the right-hand side of the presentation, you're seeing the table for minutes starting the July 16. We have another page for all the previous minutes done in using the older method. So the new method is in line with Department of Ag and a variety of other agencies. It includes the agenda, the board book, and the draft minutes, which are now succinct and shortened. And these are the ones that you received in your board packet, and a full recording of the meeting. So we are suggesting to do this in response to some comments that were received in the July meeting. And we think this will be a comprehensive record of what takes place in our board meetings. That's it, Chair, on the presentation.
Do any of the board members have any questions or discussion that they would like to raise with respect to the new minutes methodology? Okay. Then could I please get a motion to approve the methodology?
I'll move. Second.
Okay. Are there any objections?
Second. Second. I'm sorry, who was second?
Dane.
Thank you.
Are there any objections? Hearing no objections, the new minutes methodology is hereby approved. The next issue is consideration of the minutes from the July 16th, 2024 Board of Directors meeting. Does anyone have any changes or edits or comments with respect to those minutes? Okay, hearing none, could I please get a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll move.
Okay.
Second.
Dane seconded. Okay, are there any objections? Okay, hearing none, the July 16, 2024 minutes are hereby approved. Okay, we will now move on to the second item on the agenda, which is public testimony. For this section, anyone in the public will start in the conference room first and then move to online. Anyone can provide public testimony for up to 5 minutes. Do we have anyone in the conference room that would like to provide public testimony?
That's negative on our end.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone online who would like to provide public testimony? Okay, since there is no one who would like to do that, we will now move on to the next item on our agenda, which is old business. The next item on the agenda is a report from the Permitted Interaction Group that was created to create the process for the hiring of the new NELHA Executive Director position. I want to remind the board, per state law, this is a report for no action and approval. We will take action and approval at the next meeting, which we are going to schedule for next week, Tuesday, just to take up this issue. Laurence, could you please present to the board?
Sure. So the PIG, Permitted Interactive Group, met on 2 occasions and basically came up with a revised position description, which was included in the board packet. The revised position description has some minor changes, and really the largest and biggest changes are at the qualifications area. So that's at the end, section 4. And really, what the PIG felt needed to be added was a little bit more information on the type of the skill set that would be very helpful in the new executive director. So in there, we've got work that has to do with tenant outreach and relations. We have skills that have to do with running a seawater system, so an operational system, understanding that seawater systems may not be all that common, but freshwater system would be something that would be very similar and comparable. But also that skill set would include ability to understand energy systems and improve that side of things. So those are all important areas. Additional important areas that were not necessarily included in the older versions of the position description have to do with outreach to the community, because that person will really be the forward and front face of NELHA. So that's on the position description side. As I said, it has been included in your board packet. Also included in your board packet is a process. So the PIG felt it was important to lay out a detailed process so that we could move on this as quickly as possible. And we think we've done that. So of course, this is looking at a best case scenario and accelerating as much as we can. If we go through the process, we hope that we could be done by early December. So to give you an idea of what and how we would proceed, the PIG is making its report today. According to law, the PIG has to be dissolved after making its report. And so this automatically happens by the PIG making its report to this meeting. But the PIG can be reformed at a subsequent meeting, and the date of this is up for debate and discussion. But the PIG was proposing to have again a special meeting on September 3rd, which would allow the full board to act on this information that's being presented to you today. And if approved, we would move forward with the rest of the proposed process. And the rest of the proposed process basically be advertised as soon as we get an approval on September 3rd. The notice would be out for 30 days. We would use a variety of listing areas, and those are detailed out in the process that's in your board packet. We would then receive and take about a month to, first of all, over 2 weeks, rank the candidates according to the criteria that's in the position description. We would then, the two following weeks, start interviewing for the eight top suitable candidates, and from there end up with three top candidates. Those 3 candidates would be brought to the board. Most likely that would happen at the November 19 board meeting. Again, that's a PIG report, and so the board could not act on that date, but there could be a subsequent meeting, perhaps 2 weeks later, where the board could select a top candidate, and we would hopefully get that person started early December. That's a summary of the process.
Thank you, Laurence. Do any of the board members have any questions for the permitted interaction group or any comments with respect to what has been presented? Okay. Are there any comments from the public? Okay, hearing none then, I'd like to ask the board if your thoughts, we'd like to call a short 15-minute meeting next week to take action solely on on this report to one, either approve or disapprove the process, and then if approved, to establish another permitted interaction group to in accordance with the process to take it through to the report to the board in November. Does anyone have any objections to us scheduling this meeting next week, Tuesday? Okay. Thank you. All right.
Sharon, sorry, Sharon, Dane here. I might not be available next week, Tuesday. So I'll be out. I can send a designee.
Okay. Thank you, Dane.
Thank you.
All right. We will now move on to new business. The item on the agenda for discussion and decision-making is to consider a 1 kiloton per year direct marine carbon capture demonstration project by the Captura Corporation. Laurence?
Thank you, Chair. So think I'm going to do just a quick introduction, and rather than do what we usually do is have me talk for a longer period of time, is perhaps have Christine Banda, who's the Chief Operating Officer from Captura and who is online, give her presentation. I think you'll find it very interesting. There's been a lot of interest in this particular field of carbon capture, both air and ocean and marine capture. And Captura is on the marine capture side of things. So not only there's been a lot of interest, but there's also been a lot of investment in this area. And so we are particularly excited. We think this is an area that Hawaii could be a leader in. And this would be one of the first projects that would be at a significant scale. So with that, perhaps Christine, if you would like to share your screen, you can take it from here and give a quick summary of your project.
Okay, great. Can you hear me and can you see the presentation? Perfect, great. Okay, well, hello, thank you so much for inviting me, allowing me to introduce Captura to you. As Laurence said, my name is Christine Banda. I'm the COO of Captura, and I've also had the pleasure of visiting the NELHA facility. So to introduce Captura, so we are a carbon removal technology company. Captura has a simple, streamlined process for large-scale direct ocean capture of carbon. Now, why is this important? It's important because carbon removal is critical for the fight against climate change. Climate scientists have aligned and agree that to address climate change and hit our climate goals, we have to do two things. We need to rapidly reduce emissions, and we need to figure out how to remove billions of tons of excess CO2 from the atmosphere. We need to remove CO2 at scale, up to billions of tons per year by 2050, again, to hit this climate target. Captura has developed a novel carbon removal solution that does both. Our solution harnesses the ocean to remove CO2 at scale for either sequestration or utilization. Utilization being, let's say, through aquaculture partners or as a feedstock for synthetic fuels. A bit of background about who we are as a company. Captura was founded at Caltech from two professors, both of which are still with the business today, one being our Chief Technology Officer. So we are rooted in science, rooted in technology. We have a strong backing from global investors. We recently closed our Series A, a few months ago for $45.3 million. We also have significant global recognition, including being one of 20 finalists in the X Prize. The X Prize is a global competition from the Musk Foundation looking for the world's best carbon removal solutions. Over 1,300 global companies applied for this. Captura is actually one of the top 20. And I'll talk a little bit more about how this X Prize demonstration ties into this pilot project. We also have backing from US Department of Energy, where we have some feasibility studies, some funding underway. ARPA-E, we also have a pre-purchase contract with Frontier. So significant third-party evaluation of our technology. So how does our system work? Captura utilizes the ocean. The ocean is the world's greatest carbon removal device. It's historically absorbed about 30% of historic global emissions, but that's come at a cost. Ocean acidification, ocean warming. So to start, there is a natural equilibrium that exists between the atmosphere and the ocean. It's called Henry's Law. As humans, as we continue to emit CO2 in the atmosphere, that equilibrium results in the ocean continuing to absorb more CO2. Captura's system, so as the ocean absorbs more CO2, Captura's system pulls in surface ocean water into our system. Our system uses an electrodialysis process that then separates and stores the CO2 in a gaseous form. We then, again, can use that for sequestration or utilization. And then the system returns the ocean water back to the ocean. Now that ocean water is now CO2 depleted. That ocean water will then absorb CO2 from the atmosphere, again, because that equilibrium exists. Our process has no byproducts. Our process has no chemicals. We only remove the CO2 from the ocean water. So there is no impact to ocean ecosystems. We have two inputs. We have seawater and energy, and we have two outputs. The captured CO2 in a gaseous form, and then the CO2 depleted ocean water, which is returned to the ocean. Our system is mainly off-the-shelf pumping, pipes, filtration systems. We have two proprietary systems in our process. One is the electrodialysis, and the second is a degassing technology. These two proprietary technologies are what we would intend to demonstrate at the NELHA facility. Ocean health is fundamental to our approach. We add nothing to the ocean, and we have, again, no byproducts. We are only removing CO2. The only change that we have to ocean water is we actually increase the pH of the ocean water. So we reverse ocean acidification. The ocean effluent will have a higher pH, which actually could have some secondary benefits. And we have some studies that are currently funded right now with the Department of Energy to actually study if our effluent has secondary benefits to marine ecosystems. We do not require any fresh water for our system, and we have minimal land usage for our system. As a part of our work, we have an oceanography team. They've published an MRV protocol. This describes Captura's practices for ensuring ocean safety, as well as it details our monitoring, reporting, and verification protocol. Captura's technology is rapidly progressing and scaling. There is a significant amount of momentum and investment and focus on this type of technology, and Captura is progressing quickly. Our first pilot was operational in 2022 at Newport Beach. It was 1 ton of CO2 captured per year. We've been continuously operating that system and with thousands of hours of data. We have a second pilot, which has been operational for over a year. That's 100 tons of CO2 removed per year. This is located at Alta Sea, which is an R&D facility at the Port of LA. This is where we are continuing to do R&D work, a lot of MRV and ocean health studies, as well as community engagement. The third pilot, and what we'd like to be our last pilot, is what we are discussing today that we would like to site at the NELHA facility. This would be 1,000 tons of CO2 removed per year. And coupling alongside that is Captura's, final verification step for the X Prize. As I shared earlier, we're one of 20 finalists out of 1,300 global companies looking for the most promising carbon removal technology. Our final demonstration or final verification steps would take place January 2025. And then we're looking to target commercial plants, 2026 timeline. We intend that to be in the tens of thousands of tons per year size. And we also are looking to co-locate that, a potential co-locate with existing shore-based infrastructure. One of the benefits of Captura's system is our deployment strategy, in that we can couple our system. It's very modular, couple it with any existing shore infrastructure barriers, let's say water movement, like desalination.
Mute him.
To share a bit about the project details of what we are looking to site at the NELHA facility. So from a footprint, 20,000 square feet, we're looking at an outdoor site, the research campus. From a water usage, about 7,000 to 7,500 GPM of shallow water intake. Power would be 1,300 to 1,500 kVA. There's no freshwater usage for our system. Again, only inputs are power and seawater. We're looking to start the lease as soon as we can and would look to start installation November timeline. Captura system's quite modular. It's skid or container mounted. It's about 7 subsystems, including controls to allow for 24/7 automated operation. And the captured CO2, we've identified a local CO2 distributor that would take the CO2 with and focus on providing CO2 to NELHA partners if interested. And then that concludes the presentation on Captura and the project. We're incredibly impressed and excited about the potential siting at the NELHA facility, not just what the facility's mission is, but also some of the other tenants that we've been able to meet and be introduced to. There's some great potential collaboration, which is really exciting. Our 100-ton system at Alta Sea in Port of LA has a lot of aquaculture partners, and we've actually been able to co-apply on some ARPA-E studies and really work hand in hand with some of the local partners. And I see that sense of synergy as well as the NELHA facility. So thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Oh, thank you, Christine. Before we open it to questions, I'm going to show you the location. So if we could stop sharing that one, and I'll share mine. So the location where the Captura project would be in the lower left-hand corner. You're looking at a Google map of the research campus. So our offices, admin offices are here, the lab's here. The Captura project would be about 20,000 square feet in this area. And the outflow basin so one thing about Captura, you notice probably in the table, it uses a lot of water, up to 7,000 gallons per minute. And they do hope to operate for 24/7 for an extended period of time so that their demonstration can be successful. So we need a location for that water. So one of the reasons that they would be down in the research campus is this basin that was built during for OTEC projects, basically, can now be made available for this. And just to give you an idea of where the OTEC work tends to happen is somewhere in between. So when Mackay Ocean Engineering operates, they basically have about that amount of seawater going into the basin. So we know the basin can accommodate. To give you a quick summary from the recommendation from staff that's included in your board packet, we've concluded that Captura is definitely, they're a leader in the marine capture field. It's a really solid team. We've been interacting with them at length for the last month and a half at this point. And they've been, very responsible and responsive. The technology seems feasible. There's very little environmental impact, it would appear. And in fact, it might actually be beneficial. So aside from the climate considerations and potential assistance there, just the production of CO2 that they have here could replace CO2 usage already in the park. So anybody who does seaweed and microalgae has a need for CO2, and that's particularly expensive in West Hawaii. So that the CO2 could be used there. And the water, as Christine mentioned, the water coming out of their process might actually be beneficial for shellfish, for example, because it's slightly less acidic. So there may be a reuse play there as well. The biggest challenges from staff's point of view is, are we able to provide the resources to them? And on the technical side, we've been working with them at length. They've hired a local firm. They are actively looking at pretty much every aspect that goes into improving our systems or attaching to our systems so that we can provide the necessary resources. Those details are still being worked out, but we're at a point where staff feels that this is doable. One of our main concerns is Makai Ocean Engineering has a need for a large amount of water as well, seawater, but that's in a batch mode and on occasion. Captura is willing to be coordinating with any other large users, which means that they can scale down their system or not operate while other projects are happening. So we think that there's solutions there. We have had previous project in this field. The company was called Heimdall, actually works with terraformation, but they were very much at lab scale and operated in the lab. So this would be at a bigger scale, yet still well within our 127,000 GPM that we are allowed to operate under. It's a short-term project, so just 2 or 3 years. It is on a fast track, which is, they're trying to win that X prize, and it sounds like they have good chances to do so. But that does mean that they need to get in the ground sooner rather than later. So the staff is recommending a final approval at this meeting. They would be leasing the land. It would provide about $100,000 a year, so not insignificant revenue to NELHA. And I think I mentioned it earlier about the other projects that are already in this area. We would be relocating them. So we have the Nature Conservancy, integrated off-grid, the art installation, all of those projects we have worked with them to relocate them to other areas within the research campus. They seem really well funded. The timeline is aggressive, but I mean, we're no stranger to that. Almost every project that comes here has a really aggressive timeline. I will say they were formed in 2021, and they already have 2 pilot plants that they have achieved. So they just might very well be able to pull this off. So that's it for the staff recommendation summary. Chair, I give it back to you, unless you want Director Hilton to proceed with his RAC report on this project.
Thank you, Laurence. Yes, I was going to ask Director Hilton if you could please now share the views of the RAC.
Certainly, yeah. So the RAC report is also in the board packet. We were given the task of reviewing this from NELHA staff maybe 3 weeks ago. And at the time, we didn't have quite as a well-developed staff recommendation with staff observations as is in the current board packet. Just saying that as an intro to basically say that most of the minor concerns that were raised by, or questions really that were raised by RAC review have already been answered, positively. But, the basis of the project, there were 5 RAC reviewers that looked it over. All of them are universally supportive of the idea of proceeding ahead, consistent with the fast track needs of this project. Just with the only caveat being so long as the NELHA staff could resolve the resource and support problems, and it sounds like that is really very well underway. So I think we share the enthusiasm and excitement that NELHA staff has about the prospect of bringing a project like this to Hawaii. There are a couple of observations maybe worth noting in the report. The state has a greenhouse gas sequestration task force. And under Act 15 from 2018, Hawaii, there's a goal to sequester more atmospheric carbon than greenhouse gases than emitted by 2045. So a project like this coming to the state, offers great potential for us to sort of enter this space and participate in the global problem of solving, the multifaceted problem of climate change and greenhouse gas accumulation in the atmosphere, especially CO2. The rest of the comments are generally positive and supportive, and the few cautionary comments were resolved in the staff review that we've already heard about. So our recommendation stands that the NELHA staff recommendation for a fast track approval is supported as long as the resource support issues are resolved. That's basically it.
Thank you, Director Hilton. At this time, we'll open it up for any questions or discussion by the board. Director Miyashiro.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. It sounds like you guys are working on very exciting things. So thank you also for submitting the full business plan and whatnot that we received in the board packet. And we noticed a lot of the materials were deemed confidential. So my comment's gonna be very high level. I've noticed that you submitted the 2024 financials, and that right now, kudos, you guys look super strong. But what we didn't see was a project budget. So I think my question to the group is, are you able to support the lease as presented and the lease payments for the next 3 years? And do you have current funding to support the overall project?
Yes, so the 45 million that was raised as a part of our Series A, I'd say the priorities really for that funding are our piloting program, which this is the main focus, as well as R&D efforts. So the costs associated with this pilot for the full duration is currently budgeted within that Series A funding.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Wicker.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Christine. So you mentioned earlier limited water and some other infrastructure needs, but what about the energy usage? Do we have that infrastructure capacity, and has it been explored with some of the early on technologies that NELHA has focused on, OTEC or even solar?
So we have explored the power requirements, and NELHA is able to support. There is the need to do some site upgrade work, which Captura has fully scoped, including with Hawaii PE electrical engineer, as well as an on-site contractor. So Captura will be funding some minor facility site upgrades to ensure that we have the power to support this project. Have we explored other projects? I'm assuming some other NELHA-based, maybe energy projects. We haven't. We've been in touch with the Mackay team, but we have not talked about potential, collaboration on different power supply scenarios. We'd be very interested to do that, but our priority has been understanding the scope and costs in order to get the power necessary for the project.
Thank you. Chair, if I may have one other question. Thank you. So pilot project proposed, but if successful, is there the idea to expand in the state of Hawaii, establish a presence here?
I think we'd be very interested. I think Hawaii is a really great location to support a larger commercial site. Things that we've explored, obviously, we need the ocean. That's a really great, Hawaii's a really great location. There's a lot of utilization needs that there's been a challenge in providing. I think that supports a potential future site. The land is available, there's space. I think that government and would support this kind of climate technology industry. So we definitely think there's a real potential, and we would want to prioritize success of this pilot, but look for opportunities during the pilot duration to really work with local governments, local outreach, start to do some of that work to see if it could lead us toward a potential future commercial site.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Do any other board members have any questions?
Yeah, we have a question on this side.
Okay.
This is Director Jones. I think this is to NELHA staff. I was looking at the lease and I see the fixed fee. Is there also a fee for water use, or is that in services and utilities, or?
Oh, no. Oh, so I should have mentioned that it'd be the boilerplate lease, and they follow policy that all tenants follow as far as payment on the electrical, on the seawater.
Okay.
And yes, they are fully aware that this is going to be a huge seawater cost associated with this
Because
project.
you had mentioned 100,000 in revenue, but that's just for the
Just
land,
rent, that's
right?
just lease rent.
So there's more revenue from the water use.
Absolutely.
Okay, great, thank you.
There's another question from Director Sal.
Thanks so much. So I see that it says the tenant's responsible for the infrastructure. So for their drainage, their outflow, will they be installing a pipe from the back corner to the sump in the back? And since this is a short-term project, how can we make sure that that pipe is installed in such a way that we can utilize it in the future?
So do you want to answer that? Let's go.
So we're working with Captura to do exactly what you suggest. The plan is to install a 24-inch pipe from the corner of the research campus, that's the test pad site, along the fence line, along our existing pipeline corridor, drive underneath the driveway, come up the other side, and then utilize Sharon Mackay Ocean Engineering's disposal sump. They come to an agreement, an understanding with Mackay Ocean Engineering for use of that sump.
To the vault.
To the vault.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which then, as you know, drains into the basin. And that, upon completion of the project, that drainage pipe would stay in place and be usable for other projects.
Got it. Such as picking.
Such as picking.
Okay.
Director Kim, you had a question?
Oh, yes, thank you. I have couple things. Overall, I guess, my first question, is this a moneymaker for us? I see the rent amounts. I don't know if that's fair market value and how that's set. And, is there anything that could happen that would make it a money loser for us or create liability? So that's one kind of question. The economics, and I assume that the lease will protect NELHA, but haven't looked at the lease, so that's maybe a Cole question. And then my second question is, we should do things that not only help the world, but help Hawaii. And so I'd be interested in understanding better, how is this going to help Hawaii, and not just by having a tenant or having, these facilities here, but how is it going to help Hawaii companies, help Hawaii entrepreneurs, help Hawaii technology? And so, those are my two questions.
Okay, so I'll answer that. Laurence here. On the moneymaker side of the question, they are paying published lease rents and rates. This campus that was full about a year or so ago, we've had a few groups and projects leave. And so we are actually have a bit of space in the campus. And so will it be a moneymaker? Yes, in the sense that it would be a paying tenant that pays lease and covers all of their utility costs. Will they provide liability? Well, on the liability side, we are using the boilerplate lease, which is attorney reviewed, and hopefully we're covered there. Does this project present more of a liability than any other type of project that's here? I don't think so. It will be using a lot more water, but nothing that's not unheard of here. It's very comparable to the OTEC project, frankly, in terms of the volumes of water and the peak demand. And then finally, how can this help Hawaii? I think, Director Hilton alluded to that in the sense that this is an area that Hawaii could be a leader in. So not only the project could help our own state's emissions issues and getting to the 2045 goals, but this is also an area where there's a lot of interest and a lot of investment, and we could be a center for that. And I'm not just talking about NELHA, it could also be the state of Hawaii and elsewhere. NELHA happens to have water readily accessible, but a commercial scale operation would not be at NELHA right now the way we're covered. I mean, we wouldn't be able to give them enough water for a large scale operation, commercial operation. It would probably be elsewhere in Hawaii. I hope that answers your questions, Director Kim.
Sort of. I think that my mindset is everything we do should be pointing to Hawaii commercialization. Of course, I'm coming from Hawaii Technology Development Corporation mindset, but I think we should be very deliberate in that and not just leave it to the future like, oh, well, there'll be these benefits. I'd like to see really specifics on, they're going to come in and they're going to do X, Y, and Z for Hawaii. I don't know if it can be built into the lease, but it doesn't necessarily have to be, but, help University of Hawaii research, it'd be great if we could form our own companies that are like Captura, right? Or that could support this effort. And so I feel like sometimes in the agencies I've been involved in, we do things in silos and we don't follow up. We talk about these ancillary benefits, but nothing's done about it. Like Hatch, for example, I bring that up because they came to present to us to get funding, which we gladly provided, but they said there's no Hawaii startups that apply to their accelerator. So it seems like, HCDC and NELHA should be going to the university to say, hey, tell the students, if you do companies in this area, there's an accelerator. So that's just one example. So I guess I would just like to see things like this have be more of a, because obviously we're not doing it just for the money. It's not that much money. We're doing it for the other benefits. And I would argue that, the world benefits are fine. Everyone wants to save the world, but, we're a state agency. So we really should be focusing on how is it going to benefit Hawaii financially and in terms of growing the sector. And so maybe that's a question for Captura.
Yeah, I'll make a couple comments. I would just say that Captura would be thrilled to leverage the success of this pilot to demonstrate the potential that Hawaii could play in being a global hub for carbon removal, being where it is in the ocean. We are interested in doing things like we've already started to engage with Hawaii legislation. There is significant amounts of funding coming from the White House and DOE to encourage US-based commercial sites. We will be working on those funding opportunities. We will continue to talk to Hawaii legislators about what we think could be a real benefit to Hawaii in bringing an industry that has a significant climate focus, could help, job creation, as well as support a major CO2 utilization shortage. We're happy to do community engagement, any sort of outreach. We've already reached out to any aquaculture company at NELHA that would talk to us, including starting to engage with some of the universities that have some participation in studies, even an internship to engage a local university. So we absolutely would love to be involved in any of these efforts. We've got a community outreach team that will start to involve once we get confirmation that this project will take place, as well as kind of political legislative outreach. So I think it's a great question, and I think we're happy to participate. We do not see this as a quick pilot site and then we move on. We really do see Hawaii as a very interesting site location.
No, I appreciate that, and I think Hawaii is a perfect location for that. I think it's not a criticism of you. I think on the NELHA side, we need to do more because you're going to be busy doing what you need to do to prove to your investors that, you know, it's worth their money. And so I think on our side, who's working with you on our side to do those things, Christine? Is there anyone that's working with you from NELHA to make sure there's community engagement, for example?
Yeah, we have started to have those conversations with Laurence and I believe Ray.
Well,
we would be happy to kick those into full gear. This is the, you know, the necessary step, and then we will start those discussions and probably, you know, start with participation in the October event. But I see this as a partnership really between NELHA and Captura, and we're happy to do our part and work together and put a plan in place.
Well, I would highly recommend, as just one idea, that you interact with PACE over at University of Hawaii, the Pacific Asian Center for Entrepreneurship, and they have a dorm now dedicated to entrepreneurial students, and that you go give a presentation over there and maybe spark some interest in the field, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, a lot of times these college students, they don't know what they don't know. And so, they're driven by, so I'm just saying, this is a great opportunity for us to change our, maybe get a little more aggressive on these kinds of things because we've got this great company here. And, you know, I think, and I was just curious though, being a corporate attorney, helping startups here, what is your business model? How do you make money?
We're still currently in an R&D piloting phase. We actually want to license the technology. So our revenue, we have two, you know, revenue streams. One is going to be a licensing, so a royalty off the carbon credit or sale of CO2. Part of that reason is scale. We can move a lot faster and address this climate problem by licensing the technology because of all of the shore-based infrastructure that exists already. You know, 15,000 desal plants, all of those should have a Captura facility. So we will license the technology as well as maintenance revenue on our proprietary membranes that are part of the system.
Great. I'm sure your investors want their money back, right? So,
thank you. Thank you, Director Kim.
Okay, thank you.
I see the room as well as Director Wicker have their hands up. I'd just like to say beforehand as well, in addition to the excellent recommendations of Director Kim with respect to PACE, I also think it's important to check in with UH's Office of Indigenous Knowledge and Innovation, as well as with the Cultural Practitioner Network that is very involved with shoreline, ocean, and fish ponds. And we do have a Native Hawaiian hui at NELHA who could help you with this, as well as that also includes some of the closest fish ponds in the area. And I'd ask Laurent to please make sure that we have some discussions around that as this project moves forward. With that, I'll ask Director Wicker, you had your hand up first, and then we'll go back to the conference room. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just on your last thought about the university, you have an asset right up the road from NELHA, that's the UH West Halamanui campus. I would definitely encourage to work with them too. As if this becomes a commercial activity for West Hawaii and maybe the state, we got to talk about that workforce pipeline. We definitely want to engage with that community. That's part of the strategies. How do we get off of Oahu to the neighbor islands to create that economic diversification? I thought your presentation was put well together, hit a lot of points on some questions that I was coming up with. But definitely, the environmental impacts, as Chair you mentioned, wouldn't be fragile ecosystems. So anything we take out, put back in, what is that perspective? But I'd hope for the best coming out of this project because this is an opportunity for the state to brand itself and welcome this type of forward thinking. And then later we could definitely explore the type of synergies that could help create a different economy for West Hawaii. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Conference room?
Hi, Nathan Sa with Jamestown Seafood. I just wanted to kind of more concretely address Director Kim's questions from the NELHA, from the tenant perspective. So in the shellfish sector, we're a huge user of CO2 for our microalgae cultures. With my expansion plans, I'm estimating to use up to 5,000 pounds a month. I believe Taylor Shellfish right now uses upwards of 20,000 pounds a month. And that's just 2 of our facilities. So having an on-site producer of CO2 could be a big benefit, especially if it's cost effective for us. And I'm not advocating for or against Captura, just stating facts. And then as far as from our larval point of view, we would like to see as much water being run through the system as possible. So that's kind of a side possible benefit of having increased water usage. And thirdly, if the discharge is able to be shared amongst tenants, both inside the research campus and possibly outside, that could benefit us on the larval culture. Those are just some things that that could be tangible benefits to us here at NELHA as tenants.
Thank you. Do we have any other directors or board members who would like to ask any questions or share any comments? Okay. Do we have any questions or comments from the public?
I have a question. Gerald Hessinger from Indo-Pacific Sea Farms. This is for Christine. Regarding end uses of the gaseous CO2, is the state of Hawaii an appropriate location for geologic sequestration?
I do not know. I know that there's a University of Hawaii program that's looking into it. I know there's interest. I do not know. Captura has not done any evaluation about sequestration potential. At this point, the pilot and CO2 generated is small enough where we think utilization is the best approach and what we're seeking to do for this pilot. So can't quite answer that.
I would think that for geologic sequestration, you would want to select an area that's geologically stable. And that would probably rule out the volcanic island that we live on. Another point is that regarding end uses of the gaseous CO2, if that CO2 is used as seed stock for fuel production, and then that fuel is burned, would not the carbon end up in the atmosphere?
Yes, so any CO2 removed from the ocean that's utilized, it will ultimately end up back in the atmosphere, but it's like the circular economy. Better to reuse what's already been emitted than continue to, seek other sources of CO2 that require removing it from, let's say, below the earth. So yes, any utilization purpose will end up as an emission, but I think that is far a better scenario in that circular economy to use what we already have emitted and continue to cycle that.
So is it correct to assume that geologic sequestration is really the only end use that takes the carbon out of circulation over geological time periods?
Yeah, I think so. There's 2 potential scenarios. You either capture the CO2 and sequester it, which will remove that emission from the atmosphere, or we would take the captured CO2 from the atmosphere and utilize it so that we do not need to, purchase CO2 from, let's say, refineries any longer. We can reutilize or recirculate the already emitted CO2. I think both are environmentally beneficial.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments that anyone wants to share or any questions? Director Hilton.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention on the geological sequestration for the info of the board, those that may have not heard of it, but some of the geological sequestration that's going on in Iceland which is a very volcanic, basalt-based geology, is really pretty promising and interesting. And the equivalence between what they're doing there and what could be done on the Big Island of Hawaii would be worth looking into. So the volcanism is not necessarily a bad thing. I just wanted to point that out. Basalt is a great sponge for carbon under the right circumstances. And you guys are sitting on a mountain of it over there. So just wanted to make that point.
Thank you. Any additional comments or questions? Okay, with that, could we please have a motion? Oh, go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, let me get it muted. Thank you. I just wanted to inject the idea of the CO2 depleted seawater, which you're going to dump into the OTEC sump, could be very interesting chemistry, water chemistry to look at vis-a-vis the larger system water quality issues that the shellfish people and others have worried about. Nate mentioned it briefly in his question of, whether that might be good water for larval rearing. And my question would be, is that kind of CO2 depleted water maybe a good idea for running through the larger system to reduce or minimize biofouling? Wanted to put that in. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. With that being said, could I please get a motion to approve the staff recommendation and the RAC recommendation?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Director Hilton. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Director Bossert. Do we have any objections to approving the motion to approve the lease for Captura Corporation to conduct a 1 kiloton per year direct marine carbon capture demonstration project? Hearing no objection, the motion is hereby approved. Thank you. Okay, the last item on the agenda that we have is a presentation on the NELHA seawater system by the NELHA staff. Laurence?
Thank you, Chair. Let me just share my screen briefly. Okay, so the last item on the agenda is really just informational for the board directors in light of the leadership change, but especially in light of the master plan and EIS updates, which are currently underway. We executed a contract for about a month ago. We had our kickoff meeting, and we're now starting to get into details with the company. So this is Munikiyo Hiraga, which would do the EIS, and they have subcontracted to HHF planners on the master plan side. So in light of that, it seemed like it would make sense for us to present a summary and sort of the state of the seawater system at NELHA. The operational side of things tends to just be maybe not swept under the rug is not the right word, but it's not front and center. But that said, I think you're not going to find any real surprises because over the years, the issue of deferred maintenance has been fairly prominent. But summarizing it, I think is going to make sense and going to help inform the board directors as you start thinking about the future of NELHA and what changes to the master plan might need to happen. So this seemed like a good time to recap. And I've got a couple of bullet points for you to keep in mind as Keith Olson, who's our operations officer, gives a presentation and gets into a little bit more detail. So first of all, you all know this is a unique system, one of a kind. It's pretty much the lifeblood of the park. Most of the projects here utilize the seawater, whether it's the surface or the deep sea water. It's a 24/7 system, and importantly, it's demand-based, which means those companies that run on a batch mode they turn their spigot on and they can triple, quadruple their continuous demand for the seawater. So those pose challenges to our system. The system makes up about a third to a half of the NELHA budget. A few years back, it was a half. The trend has been downward on the seawater usage, something that Nate was alluding a little bit earlier. That there's collectively, the users are needing less seawater for their projects. And finally, on the basics, I want to point out that our rates have been unchanged in the certainly last 20 years or so. And we've been able to do that because we have continuously optimized the system so that we've been able to keep the rates unchanged. So these are just basics to keep in mind. The challenges, so we have an aging infrastructure. The system consists of 2 pump stations, what we call the 55 pump station that was built in the early 2000s. So you're looking at a 20-year system. The one at the Keahole Point was in the 1980s, so double that lifespan. So you're definitely looking at aging infrastructure. The distribution system itself has been an organic growth, is what I can say. As projects come in, there's been different needs and different pipelines have been installed to support the various projects that have been here. And a really important fact is that in 2008, NELHA became self-sufficient, meaning that we get no general funds for operating. That, in a sense, has caused a fair amount of backlog of deferred maintenance. So you will be seeing some of that in the presentation coming up. And one thing to keep also in mind, this is a seawater system. So freshwater systems have a lot less trouble. And it's also very highly specialized equipment that we have. Back to the one in a kind, it's not always easy to get. We have supply chain challenges. So this is sort of a summary, high level things to keep in mind. And what I will do now is turn it over to Keith. We'll get into a little bit more detail.
Well, thank you, Laurent, Madam Chair, Board of Directors, guests, and clients. I have a presentation I'd like to share with you, and let me get that queued up at the moment. All right. The presentation is about the good, the bad, the ugly, and our game plan. So we'll go over some basics first. And NELHA is a pumping utility, and we have multiple pump stations. And this pump utility has 2 primary pump stations. You heard from Laurent, it's the research campus and the 55-inch pump station. And then we have secondary pump stations, which are booster pump stations, and they provide water up to higher elevations. Each pump station is ran at a different pressure, and it allows us to move water from high pressure to low pressure, but we can't move water from low pressure to high pressure. So in other words, I can move water from our primary 55-inch pump station to the research campus, but I can't do the reverse. A quick note here is that we move a lot of water. So to kind of put this in perspective, you have to think about how much gallons per minute we're moving. So in general, we're moving probably like 14,000 gallons per minute. And to get a mind's eye of that, that's about 250 drums are filled in 1 minute. We also have a very extensive network of sensors and a SCADA system that takes the recordings of all those sensors and puts it into a historian. So we know a lot about our system. We know how to operate that system in different ways for efficiency. We can operate it for efficiency in regards to energy. We can operate it as far as efficiency for maintenance. We have all kinds of alarms on the system. We're a 24/7 operation. We need to keep the water running. We have no longer than 2-hour downtime. We have alarms that are sent to phones and to computers that will wake us up in the night to get people down here to fix problems that need to be addressed. So now the good. Uptime. This is a measure of reliability. So our system's pretty reliable. Most of the reliability is due to having pumps that are redundant. So we have several systems here, and in general, when I look at all systems, we're 99.94% uptime. So that 0.6 time that we're down, you can see in point number 2, that really looks at scheduled maintenance. It's about 43% of the time we're down. For scheduled maintenance, we had some testing for our microgrid project. That was about 20% of our downtime. And then we have some pump failures and emergency repairs that kind of accumulate to another 40% of our downtime. So I think we believe that this is a really good uptime, and most of our clients do tell us that we're doing a really good job at keeping the water flowing. The other good is that about 2 years ago, we had an Alchemy intern help us out, and we did a risk assessment of our system. We have identified 41 critical areas that could be from catastrophic to negligible, and the frequency could be high to improbable. And we kind of put it in that matrix, and we've been ticking away over the last 2 years, various parts of this risk assessment in order to better the system. And as you can see here, one of the top priorities we identified 2+ years ago was the pipeline biofouling buildup and water quality. So this was definitely on the operations in NELHA's radar. The bad. It's hard to run a system here when we're working as a state entity. I just want to remind everybody that all procurement that is greater than $2,500 has to be from companies that are Hawaii Compliance Express. Most of our supplies of sophisticated specialized equipment comes from mainland companies that are not compliant, which makes it difficult for us to procure those items. Anything over $5,000 requires about a 2-year process in order to procure. So in general, I like to tell people we fulfill most of our procurement through vendor lists. So I'm running the system on Lowe's, Grainger, and Fastenal. And anybody that has run a system would know that that's probably not how you do things. Another problem we have is inventory. We need to keep inventory here at our facility of critical parts. It's hard to keep that inventory because most companies would keep inventory by having just-in-time inventory with their suppliers. Our suppliers tend not to have the parts that we want on island, so we need to keep that inventory here because if there's a breakdown, I need to fix it within 2 hours. So we don't have any climate control storage, which means whatever I buy rusts, and then by the time I need it, it's probably not in working condition, and it could be a waste of money. And it's also very expensive to procure and maintain that inventory. All right, the ugly. We have an electrical grid that is kind of not in great shape here in the research campus and the farm compound. Several of the clients here are very aware of the farm compound issues. The main switchgear there has been on fire a couple times because of cats and mongooses that tend to want to find a warm location on a cold evening in our switchgear. We also have a transformer that is kind of rusted and probably at the end of life that needs to be replaced. And here at the research campus, we also have switchgear that is at end of life that needs to be replaced. All these are very expensive items. The procurement and the engineering is one challenge, and then another challenge is once you take something offline, we still need to pump water. So it's always a really, really big challenge in order to get things done when you need to use the piece of equipment that you need to repair. Rust. That's what Laurence was alluding to just earlier. We're not a freshwater system, we're a seawater system, so everything is rusting. So here are kind of some of the examples that are out in the field. Those that have little check marks on it have been addressed already as we go through here, these slides. But you can see that we have a lot of corrosion that can be found on pipe manifolds. We have a lot of saddles that are buried underground that kind of look like the second picture, where we really don't know the status of it, and we're trying to dig them out and try to repair those. We just recently got a quote from Fastenal to replace all of the nuts and bolts for our research campus manifold. Just to put this in perspective, I like to play the Price is Right, but we don't have time for that, so I'll just throw out the number. It's about $15,000 just to buy a bunch of bolts and nuts. So it's very, very expensive. The third picture is we have genset diesel tanks that are rusting that we need to address. And the fourth picture is another saddle that we have that is basically rusting away. If any of these saddles pop, we have a hole in the pipe now, and we have a pretty massive leak that needs to be addressed. Here are some of the leaks that we have in our system. Most of them are addressed because we can't have leaks in the system. So the first one is a leak that we were struggling with a while ago, but the reason why I have this picture here is it's endemic of what we have in our system, which is HDPE pipe. That HDPE pipe is fused or welded together to another HDPE pipe. And over time, the welds fail. And what you see in the first picture is a weld failing. And it's really difficult to repair that. You either have to re-weld it, meaning that you have to drain the pipe and have it nice and dry and go in there and weld it all back up again, or you put a tapping sleeve on it, and those are quite expensive. For this pipe, it was about $25,000 just to get the tapping sleeve. Then you have to try to schedule downtime to repair. And that's also difficult because clients like that uptime. So in order for us to repair, that means the system needs to be down. So we have several other leaks in the system, and they all tend to be of similar problems where we have bad welds. The second picture is we have two different size pipes. The first pipe is in the English system. The second pipe is in the metric system. They don't connect with the coupling, so we had to put extra restraints on there recently. And we also have water hammer. The third picture is a water hammer where a valve flipped close and we blew out a whole T. So we have these kind of problems when we have failing valves. Then we get to the pumps. And pumps are ugly because they are pumping seawater and they rust. So what you're seeing in the first two pictures are the casing of the pumps. And what happens with the casing of the pump is they tend to rust right where the packing is. If you look at the shaft, there's usually this ropey-like material that is in there, and we have to bleed in some fresh water, and that tends to rust and corrode, and then we lose the packing. It gets sucked into the pump. Both of these are split case pumps from our ISSW pump station and our 55-inch pump station. So these are above ground pumps that we have this packing problem. We have money to replace these pumps, but they're very expensive. Just the casing is about $50,000. The whole complete pump is more around $200,000. On the research campus, the last two pictures are flight pumps. The problems that we have are flight pumps. You can kind of see the motor casing or motor is inside of that black piece. And if you look closely, you'll see that we patched it up with JB Weld. We patched a lot of things up with JB Weld. These are stainless steel casings for the motor. And when the motor gets seawater in it, it shorts and it blows out the casing, and then we get pinholes and holes in there. The casing is then on the outside, not the inside has the motor. On the outside, we are pumping seawater through that in order to cool it. So any little pinhole would then blow out the pumps. We had a lot of problems a few years back with our pumps failing because water getting into them. We have put a system in right now, a mini cast system. We can detect that prior to a failure, and we can it'll automatically turn the pumps off to save us from having a total rebuild. Okay, the game plan. 2 years ago, Greg asked me to fill out some paperwork to see if we can get some reimbursable general obligation bonds. We were able to fill that out. I think June of 2023, they were approved, and it took till March of 2024 before we can start spending, April, March or so of 2024 to start spending. So we started spending that money. We have until June 2025 to spend all the money. We're going to start with the pump systems. I've already purchased new VFDs. These are what control the pumps. So they're on control loops with our pressure system. We're going to be replacing, as we talked before, the pump casings and some assemblies. That's about $500,000 worth of parts that we're going to be buying. We also are replacing some of the control systems, temperature sensor, pressure sensors, flow sensors, and we will be rebuilding some of the pipeline systems, and we will be replacing some check valves and other hardware. So that's kind of on the pumping side of things. We will be doing a lot of that kind of work and utilizing this money over the next year or two, if we can get the procurement done. And then on the electrical side, we're hoping to replace the research campus main switchgear, an automatic transfer switch to allow our genset to turn on and off automatically. We need to replace a radiator for our genset. We have to do some electrical cutover. And then in the farm compound, we need to move everybody off of the farm compound and onto the research campus. And that'll probably require $250,000 worth of electrical work once we figure out how we can get the energy out there. So that is the good, the bad, the ugly, and the game plan. If anybody has any questions, I'm all ears now.
Yeah, share.
Board members, does anyone have any questions? Vice Chair Miyashiro, please go ahead.
Sure, that was probably beyond scary. The pictures really, I think, drove it home. So I understand we have reimbursable geo funding. Does that fund have to be paid back?
Yes.
What's the plan for payback?
It's going to have to go into our budget.
Budget, or is it rate based?
Say that again.
Is it like, what do you mean budget? Is it something that will be rate based into the actual seawater cost, or are we repaying it through lease rents?
So by budget, I mean is that we are going to have to pay it back at some point. Whether that comes from, and it wouldn't be lease rate, it would most likely be seawater rate. That part has to still be worked out. So we haven't had a seawater rate analysis in some time. This is something that is probably going to happen sooner rather than later. And certainly in the context of all the upgrades that we're making. But these upgrades can't wait. They need to happen. Otherwise, the system is not going to be functioning going forward. So it's going to take a lot of our bandwidth, a lot of our efforts in the next coming year. to make all these upgrades and make sure that we can continue providing the 99.98% uptime that we have been able to thus far.
Totally understood.
Sorry, I don't have the information at this point with respect to the impact on the seawater rates or anything like that. That is like a lengthy analysis that would need to be done.
Okay. With these upgrades, I assume it's kind of like any type of building maintenance, right? We do either regular maintenance or as needed. How long would these upgrades actually last for? Is this something that we could look at I guess I have two points in this question. What's the lifespan of these enhancements and what should it be? So is this upgrades going to take us into the next 20, 30 years, or is this something that we should be maintaining in a shorter cadence?
So to answer that question, I believe Laurence prefaced it in her talk. The systems, we'll just say the research campus flight pump system is a 40-year-old system. Those stainless steel pumps that you saw are about 40 years old. We've been rebuilding them over time, and now we're at the point where they're end of life. We need to replace them. The Gould's pumps are a 20-year-old pump. So all those 20-year-old pumps are now going to be replaced. Now to the maintenance part, we're building a maintenance program, and we're just starting that right at the moment. We've been operating on a program of just fix it when it's broke. And we're moving towards a program where we're monitoring and measuring things, and we will pull pumps offline when it's time to maintain them, just like you take your car in for the oil change at a certain mileage. We're now monitoring hours on pumps, and we will be doing that kind of maintenance, preventative maintenance on our system.
Thank you. That's very helpful to know.
And so replacement costs will need to be, in the seawater analysis. So it's not just paying for these upgrades, but also future replacement costs. Not everything has the same lifespan, of course. So the purpose of doing this recap, I think the board has heard over the years that we have deferred maintenance, and we've been actively, Greg has done so much trying to get the funds to address all of this. The purpose is for the board to know where it's at, where the system is at, where we have to spend a lot of effort, because this being the lifeblood of most of the projects here, we have to ensure that that water, gets to people, and that there is no significant downtime. So we don't, of course, you saw the worst case pictures, and I'm happy to say it could be worse, believe it or not. But so you're really seeing, the worst of it, just so you can be aware of the types of issues that on an ongoing basis are important for the staff here to take care of. And that plays into the master planning and what the future, looks like. We talk about add-ons on the energy side, but we have to remember that just keeping the basics on the ocean and seawater distribution side, there's a cost to that. It's that needs to also continue if we are to continue providing seawater to the various projects here.
I think to add to that, as we mature as an organization, I think we have to look at how to fund improvements and maintain the facilities in a sustainable way, right? I know in the past, Greg did a really good job at securing funds for infrastructure, but it's a little scary to fund the whole infrastructure in that manner, especially when one of the things that NELHA does pride itself on is being self-sufficient, right? In a truly self-sufficient model, we would be able to plan and allocate for maintenance costs and end-of-life costs, equipment costs as well, right, in our overall planning. And I urge us, as scary as those pictures do look, that we also be responsible in how we maintain the equipment, the pipes, and the facility as well, right?
Yes, and remember that the park is not fully developed, so it truly could be self-sustaining if it was fully developed and all the land was leased and users were using a much higher volume of water than they are using now. So part of the challenge is to find the path to get to that fully developed park that then can be truly self-sufficient. So, we're close to self-sufficient, but perhaps that little extra needs to be included in order to be truly self-sufficient long-term. But that's really going to just happen if the whole park is developed. And I'm hoping that this master plan and the board's going to help us draft a path to get there.
I think I'd want to push back on that a little too, right? I think we keep saying, as a board with the master plan, I mean, there was a lot of things in there, right? In addition to potentially having some private sector development to offset some of the public uses, right? Well, that is ideal, and I think that's something we can plan too. I think one of the things for the current tenants and the way the park currently exists also has to be sustainable as well, right? Given the seawater pipes are our lifeblood, I think, and it's been in existence for 40 years, I think we do have to be realistic on how the costs eventually bear out as well, right? So if we do never get to the point where all of the land is leased out and we're doing some privatization and whatnot, if we don't get there, what does that mean for our current tenants and where we are as a current park, right? Because I would hope that similar to, I think, some other water issues we had on maintenance is we probably could get a little bit more surgical on how we maintain the existing assets.
And I do think that this raises the importance of the master plan. It raises the importance of looking at additional revenue streams, additional areas of focus. And thank you, Keith, for highlighting the importance of making sure it's proactive maintenance as opposed to deferred maintenance and how we address that delta, which is a very big delta, right? Not unlike every other government agency that is addressing deferred maintenance right now as well. But, how we address that in the master plan moving forward is going to be vitally important, and how we prioritize things will be vitally important. I know we're coming close to the end of our time. Do we have any other board members with questions or comments or reactions?
Chair, sorry, if I could interject again. I do want to, actually highlight the work that the NELHA staff has been doing. I think it's commendable that you guys have been keeping the host park and the facilities up with its uptime. I think my comments are more into how do we get everyone resources so that it's not this, it's not the fire drill or, or the heroic measures taken to keep something up for, our uptimes, but more, how do we get resources to everyone so that it is sustainable, not just for the park and its tenants, but also its staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Conference room, you have your hand up.
This is Director Jones. I really appreciate the work that you did, Keith, and the NELHA team for presenting that information. I just want the board to know, as we're sitting here talking about the need for more water usage and more revenue, Blue Ocean is looking at putting in a well that will take away from the water usage because of the water quality. When I saw item 6 on the agenda, I assumed it was the continuation of the report from Dr. Wyban. I'm not quite sure whether we bottomed that out and voted that into the record or not, but I would propose that we do that and make that public. And also, in addition to the preventive maintenance, which is certainly needed, we shouldn't lose focus on the need to address the water quality issues.
Yeah, it's part of the entire system. The conversation in the last two board meetings had been more on the water quality. So it was felt that it would be important to have a bigger picture as well.
No, I mean, the pictures spoke
Yeah.
the words, so that's great.
And to also remember that we also have the other water issues in terms of permits and working with the broader Kailua Kona community, and that are very stringent limitations on what NELHA may or may not be able to do moving forward. Mr. Wyban.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, that was a really interesting presentation, Keith. I did note that at the beginning, you talked about a risk assessment that you folks did with an intern or something like that. And in the top box under risks, it was biofouling. And that was one of the two candidate explanations for the water quality issue. So I was wondering if you had any thoughts or comments on addressing the idea of biofouling in the system as you're planning this big equipment replacement and so forth. Thank you.
So currently the equipment replacement is mostly on pumps and hardware, not necessarily on rerouting pipes. There is one pipe rerouting, and that's due to the risk of having a Schedule 20. Let me repeat that, Schedule 20, 18-inch pipe that could blow at any moment. That's been in the ground for 20 plus years, or probably 40 years, right, in the 80s. So I see the first steps is just to get our pumping system up to a reliable system. And then for biofouling, we're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. As you know, that we replaced a lot of our valves with butterfly valves. So that kind of doesn't allow us to pig the system. So a lot of people talk to me about, oh, we just need to pig the system, but you can't pass a pig through a butterfly valve. I'm more than willing to change them out to gate valves, but that's going to be huge downtime, because to take a 24 or 28-inch pipeline offline and then to change those valves out, that could be huge. So as we move forward, perhaps it's going to be more of a long-term perspective than a short-term perspective on the biofouling. But as we also move forward, we've been looking inside pipes when we get in there, and I have several of those pictures to show also. But I'm not seeing the kind of fouling in some of the areas that we've looked in thus far. Perhaps they're in other areas that I haven't been able to reach.
Thank you, Keith. Okay, any additional comments or questions from any of the board members? And thank you for the suggestion on the report on the seawater quality. We will be, we'll need to consider that and agendize that for the next board meeting. The next regularly scheduled board meeting, not the special board meeting. To give everybody the necessary time. Okay, so if there are no other questions or comments, the last item on the list is just the announcement of our regularly scheduled board meeting, which is Tuesday, September 17th. In addition, based on our discussion about the permitted interaction group process, we are going to be having a special board meeting next week, Tuesday, September 3rd at 10 a.m. We expect that to be just one item for consideration, the board's action on the report and recommendation that was provided by the existing, or now after it presented non-existent, permitted interaction group committee, and then the establishment of a new one to take that process forward on the selection of the next, or the hiring of the next NELHA executive director. Are there any questions or comments? Okay, with that, thank you for everyone's participation and attention, and the meeting is hereby adjourned at 11:39.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.